Is this thing working? Are we live? It looks like we're live. What's going on, everybody? Two Wheel Tuesdays. So, talking about leader bikes tonight. Are they worth it? Are there any downsides to the leader sport bike? We'll be talking about your first time checking into Two Wheel Tuesdays. Thank you for stopping by. It's a live show that I do on Tuesdays talking about motorcycles, pretty much any kind of bike you want. I'll typically kick off the video with a topic, but you guys can take it pretty much wherever you like. This is my opportunity to interact with you. If you've got questions about bikes that I have done a ride and review on, now's a great time to bring them up. I am going to try to be bringing you guys ride reviews every month. I'm hoping that I can bring you guys maybe 2 or 3 per month, but we'll see how that works out. Again, fingers crossed, weather permitting and all of that, we'll be able to have some fun with that. So a big shout out to my friends over at Stubbs Cycles in beautiful Houston, Texas, for allowing me the opportunity to have free reign of the inventory on site. Check out their website, especially their used inventory. That turns pretty quickly. Pick out a bike that you like. Tell me what you want to know about it. I'll take it for a ride and I'll do a review for you. So there you have it. They've got all kinds of different bikes. At last check, there's an Africa Twin that I'm going to try to get my hands on. There's a couple of Indians, sport bikes, cruisers, everything you can think of. There's something over there. So without any further, let's dive into this. Skids is in saying, dude, what is happening? He's got the guy with the flex and the shades. I love it. So talking about leader bikes, this is one thing that I did kind of want to get into. In fact, I just got through working on mine, getting it set up. I'm in the process of putting my GSXR 1000 through break-in. And during break-in, there's also some get to know you. It's not just, engine stuff. It's, getting the chain worked in. It's getting everything aligned. It's getting all the levers and controls, getting everything just so. And what I've been doing of late is just that. I've been kind of taking it easy on the bike. I don't really run it hard, kind of being easy with it, which oddly enough is really easy to do on a leader bike because they are so powerful and they do have a tendency to, you get to speed pretty quick without really having to roll onto the throttle too hard. I'll put it to you that way. So I figured since I was putting my bike through what is in essence, not really a prolonged break-in period, but I just got other stuff that I've got to do along the way with this bike to get it sorted out. I'm riding these other motorcycles, it got me to thinking, is a leader class bike right for you? And what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about some of the things that I've noticed that had I spent more time with this bike before, I would have at least, I'm not saying I wouldn't have bought the bike. I'm just saying I may have been able to take things into a certain level of consideration. The first thing that I wanted to talk about with the leader stuff is, man, that you talk about a playful bike. And a happy one too. One of the things about the GSXR 1000 and really any of the leader class bikes is when you ride them, they're just so lively. There is no waiting for power production. People talk about how this engine makes torque or another engine, whatever. Leader bikes are always making power. Like it's always right now kind of power, which makes riding them really, it's a rich riding experience in that you've got power on demand basically at any RPM. So that part of it's really cool. My background with GSXR 750 primarily is a track bike, but also was my street bike and an RC51. I can tell you that, it's definitely more power. If you've got a GSX, this is the messed up part of it. If you've got a GSXR 750, a GSXR 1000 is everything that you wish your GSXR 750 was. But with maybe one exception, the only drawback that I've been able to find so far, just in terms of riding experience with my GSXR 1000, has been how stiffly sprung that it is compared to a middleweight. And so as we're talking about these leader class bikes, one of the main things you've got to remember is that these bikes are capable of carrying crazy speeds and crazy acceleration rates at all angles of attack. And because of that, they are going to be more stiffly sprung. And to give you an idea, they are, just without getting too nerded out here, the front forks on a leader class bike are on the GSX-R 1000 and on the ZX-10R and on the CBR 1000. Those bikes have fairly stiff fork springs and fairly stiff shock springs. The R1 is the lightest sprung of the group, but even the R1, being the lightest sprung of the group, is sprung basically the same as like a GSX-R 750, for example. It's not that far off. Now, look, get it. Geometry, the angle of the dangle, swing arm length, and all of that is going to come into play. And that does affect final spring rate, so to speak, like how it is affected by movement. But the idea that the 1000cc bike, for whichever one you're picking, is going to be more stiffly sprung, which means it's going to be less compliant for the street. And for some guys, that might be a little bit of a problem. I have found that I have had to, I've got my whiteboards right behind my computer. I've had to soften my suspension up in the front a little bit to make it a bit more compliant. And I've also pulled compression, rebound, high speed and low speed rebound out of my entire settings. All of them are changed to be softer. And the reason for that is I would get the bike on the side of the tire and at a pretty decent clip too. And I would still get a little bit of pogoing out of the front of that bike. And I've got to, at some point, it's going to get a little bit warmer and I'll be able to get the bike out and really lean on it on some of these sweepers that I'll typically test the suspension out on. But in this type of a situation, if you want the suspension to be a little bit more forgiving in those scenarios, and because I'm not hitting these sweepers at, say, 130 miles an hour, I'm only hitting them at like maybe 100, having all that extra dampening isn't helping me because there's just not enough load to compress those springs. So because of that, softening it up allows everything to settle down a little bit more easily. And at more reasonable speeds, say, 100 to 120 miles an hour, as I've got that bike leaned over on the side of the tire, it is allowing the bike to settle in and go through that bend a lot easier. So that's one of the things that I've noticed, where on like the GSX-R 600 that I rode, there's some off-camera stuff that, so mum's the word, right? But there is some off-camera stuff that I'll be able to play with that bike a little bit. And there were times where I would get that GSX-R 600 onto the side of the tire looking through a corner. Typically it's a left-hander. I don't know just how the route is that I'm on. There's a couple of there's one or two right-handers here and there, but primarily a left-hander that I can always kind of count on to get a good feel for how the bike's going to set up and feel as the bike compresses. I can see it through. And that, for me, that bike was nice and subtle, whatever. Anyway, you get the idea. It was nice and poised, but I got the idea that, man, if I tried to carry a whole lot more speed with this bike, it's going to start to get a little bit unsure of itself. And it wasn't anything to do necessarily with the spring, because the way that that bike is sprung, it's perfect for the street. Very smooth. That engine's so silky too. And I found myself wanting to push it harder and harder and harder. And, the intrusive thoughts. Fun fact, by the way, the GSX-R 600 ride review video, that was take number 2. There were some initial, the intrusive thoughts took over. And although it would have made for great video, it's not necessarily something you need to see when you're promoting a dealership. So in the bin it went. But yeah, no, that bike was a whole lot of fun. But again, for a lot of folks, they'll say, well, the leader class bike is too much power. It's absolutely untrue. And it's not one of these things, you can never have more. No, it's not that. It's just not too much power. It's the perfect amount of power for the street, because you can be in any gear that you want to be, roll into the throttle, and you can just, I mean, it's acceleration on demand. And the other thing is this too. This is what I wanted to bring up. A lot of folks will say, well, the 1,000cc bikes are too much power for the street. I don't understand where that is coming from because, guys, to be honest, leader class bikes aren't that fast. Let me explain what I mean. They're fast. They are that fast, but they're not mind-changing, life-changing fast. What a leader class motorcycle does, and this is one of the things I was trying to illustrate with the GSXR 600 video. At cruise, 75 miles per hour, the GSXR 600 is tacking basically what the GSXR 1000 is tacking at 100 miles per hour. So you've got to think of it in those kinds of terms. You know, from looking at it from the GSXR 600's point of view, that's a lot more RPM, right? Like 30% more RPM. So when you see it from that angle, you'll start to pick up on, okay, well, the GSXR 600 has way more aggressive gearing, like 33% if you're looking at that, or the 25% step down for the GSXR 1000. That is a massive difference in gearing force. And so you just take, in essence, you know, in a 1-to-1 ratio, you would take whatever the GSXR 600 has and give it another 30%. And in this case, I mean, what are they, like 45? So that's equivalent to like 74 foot-pounds of torque that you pick back up through gearing. That's why I'm saying, dude, these 600s aren't necessarily not torquey. It's just you've got to have them up in the RPM to play with it. But I guess at the end of the day, my whole point is this. When you start to ride the bikes, you'll find out, okay, there's a certain amount of thrust that you get out of like GSXR 650. It's not like that is, it's not as much, but it's also, let's say it is the same amount, but it's not for as long. If I can finally get to the point that I'm trying to make, it's the same amount of thrust in essence, but it just doesn't last as long. And so you have to be in the next gear up. Where a 1,000cc bike, you might be in fourth gear. The other, like a GSXR 600, may have to be in, if I'm in fourth, that GSXR 600 is absolutely in fifth, maybe even in sixth at that same, you know, at that same power level and at that same speed. And so I just have all that much more power to just keep accelerating, and it just never stops accelerating. And so the way I've tried to explain leader class bikes is like this. You can just fan the gears on any of the, I mean, just pick one, your favorite, ZX10. You can just fan through the gears getting onto a highway and you'll do 130 miles an hour. And it won't feel like you're doing anything weird at all. It won't feel like you're doing anything like crazy. You're not going to feel like you're taxing the bike. You're not going to feel anything like that. It's just going to be you're rolling into the throttle. You're looking over, doing your head check. Everything feels nice. You're just going on about your business, and you're going what other folks might go, oh my God, that's a ridiculous speed. And it's like, yeah, for them it is, but for us, it's just kind of rolling. Ain't nothing to it. So you're not going to get that with the smaller bikes. And if you watch the GSXR 600 video, I'm not really all the way into it, just running the bike through the gears, getting onto the highway. And the amount of time that bike took to get to whatever speed it was going, let's call it 100 miles an hour. That GSXR 1000 would have been doing 130, 140. So there's a major difference there, but you wouldn't get, it's the same sense of working the machine. And I hope that's translating. Like, you don't get the sense that you're taxing either one of those machines with what you're doing. It's just that you'll end up going a lot faster on 1,000. That's really the only thing. DM is in. What is up? Sovereign is checking in, saying you need a new spring rate B, 10s for us 200 pounders. So I've got a 10.5 comes factory on my bike. Then I have 9.5 and a 10 in the front. The GSXR 1000 comes with 10.5s. For both of them, for the BFF and the BDF or whatever it is that I've got, the standard 43 millimeter. But both of them have 10.5s up front. And I tell you what, I actually dropped my sag. So initial sag on that bike was 34 millimeters. And I was like, man, that just seems like not exactly right. The rear, as best as I can measure it, is exactly 35. In fact, I'm looking at it right here while I'm telling you this. What I did with mine is I went 1/2 turn softer on my preload, just to take a little bit, just to basically bring the front end down a little bit. The suspension settings are there just to make it a little bit more compliant. But I brought the front end down by about 2.5 millimeters with that half turn. And I'm sitting right at 37 millimeters. I mean, it is literally splitting the mark on the ruler that I'm using. In fact, proof's in the pudding. So if you look, 120 millimeters is the stroke length of that fork. And where the blue tape is, that's so I can signify if it'll focus. Anyway, that is at my 83 mark. And so that is so that when I'm looking at it, I'm like, where is it again on the tape? And I got the light, and these things are reflecting everywhere. So yeah, that's me. This is the ruler that I was using to measure everything up. But yeah, no, it worked out. It seems to work out pretty well. Bike is more stable when I'm because it's kind of funny where there's a spot where I will get on the bike and I will start fanning it pretty hard. And I'll run it up to about 11,000 RPM and just kind of let it go through the gears. But if this is straight ahead, I'm like this on the bike. All right. Because it's what it is. It's kind of an on area getting onto one of the freeways. And there's nothing. I mean, there's absolutely nothing around you. It's just you, the side of an overpass, and that's it. But it's a long way, and I can just kind of fan it. And I mean, we're talking pretty big numbers. Typically, a little bit over the speed limit. So yeah, you get the idea. And before, I would keep in mind the bike's on. It's not on the side of the tire. I'm not hanging off of it, but I am turning as I'm doing this. And I go first gear, second, or I'll go first, second, roll into it in second, and right as the front tire starts to float, I'll catch third. And then from there, I'll just kind of hold, I don't know, 80% throttle-ish and just start fanning the gears. And I'm not even hitting like shift lights or anything like that. I'm just, as I feel the bike really start pulling strong, I'll just grab a gear. And it'll get to a speed, right? Like I was illustrating earlier. And the bike, it'll get just a little bit of a head wobble on a couple of the shifts. Keep in mind, I'm still accelerating, but I'm not holding on. You never hold on to the handlebars like that, especially not in this scenario. And I'm just kind of letting it do its thing, and it's about as happy as you can get. Plus, with these suspension setups, it's a lot more compliant over some parts in the road. This is the problem with having a bike like this on the street too. And I was talking about, how compliant it is or whatever. It's because of the stiffer spring rate, the bike had a tendency. It would almost resonate. There was like some undulations in the road, like miniature whoops, right? And it's just going, and I'd done a video, and it really wasn't all that great. But I'm in the helmet, you can hear it go, as it's doing that. And now it's a lot smoother. There's a little bit of that, but you have to expect that. Oh, and the rear spring on mine is a 108 too. So I've got 10.5s up front with a 108 out back, where a lot of the bikes are hundreds. And then some of there are a couple of liter bikes that have 80s out back, but I think there's a difference in where the shock is mounted and the geometry of that swing arm. So for the rear, you can't really judge the rear because of where that shock may be, the orientation of the shock, the length of the swing arm, all of that, not so much. So, let's see. DM said, oh, he's got 9.5s and a 10 up front. Yes. In fact, K-Tech recommends for me, it recommends a 9.5 for 200 up to 220 pounds with gear, I think. But yeah, 9.5 would be really good on that bike. But I've got it. It seems to be pretty happy with the 10.5. I just have to set my valving a little bit softer to allow it to move around a little bit. Plus, guys, got to remember, I when this thing's on the side of the tire, man, I'm going fast, right? So you want a little bit more spring just to give you a little bit more support in that respect. But I can see where a 9.5 would probably be a better spring. DM said, I like having a big motor doing a small job. Yes, it feels softer, easier. Leader bikes don't beat me up on the freeway. True that. One of the things that I have noticed with mine is it's a good way to put it, a big motor doing a small job. I feel a lot more relaxed on a leader bike than I do on a smaller bike. I don't know if it's because of RPM. I don't know if the smaller bike just feels more frantic or what. I like having the safety or the security, if you will, of just having quite a bit of power on demand. So, yeah, I would say that I do like that, but GSX 750 is calling my name again. Oh shit. I need to put it. So I don't have a screen sharing on this computer, unfortunately. I was going through my phone earlier and I was finding like old videos and stuff like that saved to like my email or whatever. Anyway, I posted one of them up. It was a car video, but I found a picture of my old bike and I was like, oh shoot, and for those of y'all don't know, my track bike, it started off life as GSXR 600 and it got shucked and, that motor blew up. And so anyway, GSXR 750 engine went in out of a wrecked Gixxer 750 with GSXR 600 exhaust cam, Power Commander, R11 Yoshimura exhaust, K&N filter. Anyway, that bike put down 132, consistently 132 to the rear tire. But it was a good bike. That's one of the bikes I should not have let that one go. And I'll tell you why I got rid of it. I got pissed off at it because I was having rectifier issues and we could not keep rectifiers on that bike for whatever reason. Went through 2 of them. I got pissed. I sold it and I had planned on getting it. At the time, it would have been a 2012 CBR 1000 is what I was going to get. And then I ended up moving back to Texas. Kane's asking, is Demon 170 still relevant? Not on this channel, it isn't. Gary's saying, hello from Sacktown. Oh, NorCal checking in. What's up, Gary? Hope you're doing well, man. Goldfish is saying, in 2011, Suzuki updated the 750 and the 600 chassis. Forks brakes. Do you know why they only updated the GSXR 600 engine? Is it because of racing? How are you breaking in your Gixxer? Mine is a 600. Only has 300 miles. There were a couple of updates along the way with the 600. The 750, baby, it's a Gixxer 750, man. Ain't nothing got to be done to that thing. In its last iteration, there was some software updates, but that's really it. I can tell you that the GSXR 600, as great of a bike as it is, it's always going to be, in my opinion, the better of all of the 600s because of the ergonomics, simply. People say, well, it needs to be updated with, gadgets and gizmos, TFT screen, quick shifter, and nah, screw that, dude. I would be bummed out if they ever updated Gixxer 600 and their Gixxer 750 in a way. I'll be honest with you. I love that it's an old school throwback experience. And I was genuinely stoked when I saw the display, the little the reddish, orangish display when I was in that underneath the overpass on the ride along video. It's like, yes, oh, it's back, dude. I love that. So to get rid of that would kind of be a bummer for me. But how am I breaking in mine? I took it real easy for about the first 250-ish miles, and I did an oil change at 250 miles. Then I did another oil change at the normal service interval of 600 miles. And then from there, I'll be doing oil changes every, say, couple of thousand miles, probably 1,500 to 2,000 miles is when I'll do the oil changes, or once a year, depending on how it works out. What I feel like and this is another video that I will be doing again. It's one that I didn't post because it sucked. Bad. I just couldn't seem to put sentences together on this video. This happens a lot too. Fun fact behind the scene, for every video that you see that I do that might be a standalone video, that could be the first, third, fifth, or 25th take on that video. It just, and in some cases, the ride-along videos are a lot easier for me to do because I'm just talking about what's happening right now in front of me. But anyway, that video, for whatever reason, it was kind of a failure to launch. I need to reevaluate it. But anyway, how am I breaking in my bike? So the first 250 miles was real easy on it. I would roll into the throttle a little bit here and there, but nothing too crazy. You do want to load the engine. Just don't go crazy with it. Don't go skylight this thing. You know, it was asking me to keep mine under 7,000 RPM. And I wouldn't really take it much higher than that for the first 250 miles. For the next 250 miles, I just rode the thing like a motorcycle. Now, I wasn't doing wide open throttle blast, top end runs or anything like that. Just riding the thing, riding the motorcycle the way that I would ride it. The way I look at it is like this. And this is something that you're going to hear me say in this video if I ever get it put together. Ride the machine, drive the machine, utilize the machine, whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is, in the way that you would normally use it. And the reason why I say that is, in my experience, I've never been rewarded on the back end by babying an engine during break-in. I have done this before, and I used to be exceptionally particular about break-in procedures and all of that stuff. But the problem is that in some case, so, you break it in right, it's going to, per the book, it's going to last longer and it's going to be all that. Okay, real talk here, guys. I have babied engines that broke early. I've babied engines that got worse gas mileage and made less power than engines that I know were practically identical and got the hell beat out of them. I've just never been a real big proponent of babying something that is going to have to exist in a world where it's not going to be babied. It's like it's not a realistic expectation, if you will, of that piece of machinery. So anyway, I do take it easy though for about 250 miles, letting all the sharp edges get worn off of metal parts. And then from there, I just ride it. And now it's almost, in fact, it hit over 700 miles about 15, 20 minutes before I started filming. I I just ride the thing now. You get the thing over 1,000 miles and you're good. Oh, it will get another oil change at 1,000 miles. Sorry, forgot to mention. So I do 250, 600, and then one more at 1,000. I do the first oil change is with just base grade oil. The second, and from there on, is all full synthetic. Kane's asking, what's the best starter motorcycle, and are motorcycle helmets expensive? The best starter bike is the bike that you get started on. For me, okay, so it depends on what you're into. If you like cruisers, let's start there, okay? If you like cruisers, get yourself a Rebel 500. A Rebel 300 isn't really going to be enough to allow you to do highway stints, but a Rebel 500 will. I love the way that they look. They are a true metric cruiser in that they're not trying to be an American cruiser. They're a real neo bobber style look, and I love it. I love the way those bikes look, and I love the personality of that motorcycle. So if you like cruisers, Rebel 500, awesome bike, awesome bike. Hell, even the Rebel 1100 is not going to freak you out in terms of power production. It's just that a 500 is going to be significantly less expensive, and if you're just getting started, it's an easy bike to ride, so go for that. If you like sport bikes, shoot, or sport nakeds, really, it doesn't matter. If you like sport nakeds, an MT-07, Yamaha MT-07 is really hard to beat. Also depends on how big of a guy you are and how old you are too. But don't be fooled by smaller, like itty bitty smaller bikes are better beginner bikes. I don't really believe in that. I think that they do have their place. Like I would love to have a Royal Enfield 350. Really pretty bike. It's a fun in and around town bike. Just for the aesthetic, a 650 Continental GT would be a killer bike too. If you're into the old school look, very inexpensive motorcycle, very low maintenance. And in fact, there is one on offer at Stubbs Cycles, and I am itching to ride the thing. So I may just do a ride review on the Continental GT 650 just because I like the bike so much. It's a pretty little thing. So those are cool bikes. If you're into sport bikes, oh man, R7 would be a great one. These are they're almost more intermediate bikes, but you can grow into them. Daytona 660 or the GSX 8R, like the one that I did the review on. Really good bike. Kane's asking, what do you like to do more, working on bikes or cars and trucks? I'll tell you what, it depends. Cars, for a lot of things, are just easier to get to. Motorcycle, you have to disassemble motorcycle to get to stuff. But once you do, I mean, it can be a bit more fidgety with bikes. But in general, my heart's really more with motorcycles. I don't mind working on cars. I don't mind working on some cars. There's some that I don't like. I don't like working on Fords, especially Windsors, because they have the two-piece timing cover set. It always leaks. I like Chevrolets the most to work on because they're the easiest. So if I've got my druthers, give me a C6 Corvette. I can field dress a C6 Corvette or a Viper. I can field dress those cars pretty quickly. They're easy to work on, easy to get to everything. Pickup trucks are obviously real easy to get to everything. So it just depends. I'm pretty happy as long as I've got, something I can work on. Settings, fiddle with. I'm usually a pretty happy guy. Skid's asking, did you mention a Suzuki SV650 as a starter? No, I didn't, but it's one of the best bikes you can buy, period. So the thing is that the GSX 8S kind of took the place of the SV650. You can find those things for sale, though, used all over the place. But in the lineup, the GSX 8S took its place. And damn, is that a good bike? Any of the GSX numeric bikes, really good. Golfer is saying, I was doing some research yesterday. The GSX R1000 has dominated the endurance competition with 12 championship titles in 17 seasons, with 19 wins on 24 hours, including Le Mans. Did you know that? Unreal. I did know that about Suzuki from a while back, but I didn't realize it on the endurance side that they were still rocking them as hard. The reason why it's doing so well, I can tell you this just from my experience with Suzuki's, man, they are flipping bomb proof. They always make more power than they are rated at, or if anything else, they run like they're making more power than they're rated at. Those Suzuki's 600, 750, 1000, GSX 8R, GSX 8S. Go down the list of motorcycle. Oh, the big one is the GSX S series of bikes, underrated as hell. My Katana was actually more like 160 horsepower. It's rated at like 148, which is bullshit because it'll damn near put that to the rear tire. So, by the way, that bike's still for sale. Hard Rock is in. Good evening. Kane saying, why don't you also buy a cruiser so you can have both a fast bike and a cruiser? I technically have two, in a way, three. So I have a 2013 Triumph Thunderbird 1600, which I love to ride that thing. It's my first big cruiser that I've ever owned. I was never a cruiser guy. My wife was wanting to get back into riding. She doesn't ride herself. She likes to ride on the back. And I was like, yeah, I'll get us a bike. I didn't even realize that the Thunderbird existed. And I was looking at some Harley Davidsons, and then I came across the T-Bird and fell in love with it. They don't make it anymore, but to me, it's a killer bike. I've got some rides on the channel with that bike, so check it out. The Bonneville is, I wouldn't really call it a cruiser, although there are definitely cruiser variants of it. It's more of a cafe style bike, but I've got my Rebel 250. I mean, that is definitely a cruiser. So, oh, and there is a ride review coming of that bike too. So don't fret. It's coming. Let's see. Break Stuff saying, speaking of working on cars, do you have any tips for bleeding the ABS pump without being able to activate it with a code scanner? Man, not really, unfortunately. I mean, I would say, if you can't run it, like, I'm going to say something, and I'm just going to say it, and I'm going to let it sit out there. Just bleed the system like you would normally bleed it. If you're trying to pump, if you've got a new ABS unit, I can understand this can be a major pain in the ass. But you will get there eventually. I know sometimes guys try to gravity bleed them. I don't really have a good suggestion. If it's a new part, there are pressure bleeders that you can use that can get the job done. Just be careful with them. But that's really it. I mean, there's no real sexy way to get around it. I would say pressure bleeder would be the first place that I would look, though. Kane's asking, what am I better at, road racing or drag strip? Man, I've got a lot of experience with both. Probably drag racing, just because I'm much more recently, or have been much more recently, very involved with it. But if you're asking what I like better, road racing. I have way more fun with a motorcycle on the side of the tire or a car going through corners than I am with drag racing. It's the problem with road racing is it gets super expensive. Tires, you're going to cook tires a lot. But no, my love is in road racing, and I just really do enjoy drag racing though a lot. I got real good at it when I was really young. In fact, I used to bracket race Foxy's 5-speed car, and I used to bracket race that car. This is a world where most people don't try to bracket race a 5-speed car, and I didn't think anything of it. I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. Did pretty good with it for a while. The Viper, matter of fact, that one right there, that one, that car spent a lot of time at a place called the Blunt Base in Houston. I had that car out there a lot. Goldfish. Yes, I have. How many Triumphs do I have? I have the Daytona, the T-Bird, and the Bonneville. I got three Triumphs right now. Very much liking the Triumph motorcycles. I like them a lot because they're always just a different take on a subject. One of the things that one of the bikes that I love, and the things I love about it is the Daytona. This is funny to me because my Daytona is basically everything that the R9 is going to try to be. It's like a modern version of my Daytona. Somewhere around 900 cc's at displacement, sport bike, rev range up to around 10,000, 11,000 RPM. All of this is the same, guys. It's all like what's old is new again. What's new is old again, or whatever. That's how the new super middle class is. Kind 90, the Ducati, the new V2 Panigale. All of these bikes making around 120 to let's call it 120-ish horsepower, with almost liter class torque. It's just that they don't rev as high, and that's why they don't make the horsepower. They just are not capable of the legs that a liter class bike has. But I mean, it's got most of the chops. In fact, my my Kawasaki Z900 RS Cafe, when I got done with it, would have given the R9 hell to deal with. So I mean, I've had a couple of bikes that fall into that category already, and it's going to be a fun category. It's going to be a fun group of bikes, but it will not be a replacement for liter class bikes. Not in the United States, and not in markets where the liter class bike is still available. You got to remember, guys, there's a lot of areas around the world where that bike, just the liter class bikes, or any of the super sports for that matter, are simply not available. Emissions or whatever reason just don't allow for it. So Kofi is saying, because of you, now I'm looking to sell my Z900 RS to get a Triumph T120. So let me put it to you this way. The T120, that Bonneville, is really good. I am not going to say that it's better than your Z900 RS. I liked my Z900 RS a lot, but you've got to remember that the way that I ride, it just was not going to be able to keep up. I say that. It was going to be all new suspension. I was going to have to redo the forks, all new rear suspension in general. And it was just going to end up being more cost effective for me to get a bike that was going to be able to, honest to goodness, manage the type of riding that I was going to end up doing with the bike anyway. Part of me kind of wishes I would have kept that bike and maybe just figure out a way to shut that exhaust up a little bit, just because the tone that it would give and where it would exit, it was coming right into my right ear, and it was just it was like, oh my God. But anyway, the Bonneville T120, where the Bonneville T120 is a lot of fun. Keep in mind, it's about 20 less horsepower than what you got now. But it's got a lot of torque, and it's just a fun bike, but in a different way. I don't know between the two which one I would rather have. But if you've got a Gixxer 600, do this. If I had a Gixxer 600 and a Z900 RS, I would get rid of the Z900 RS and get a Bonneville T120. There, I said it. Let me tell you why. Even if you don't tune it, just leave it bone stock. Do the snorkel, remove the snorkel and the grommet, and just ride the thing like a motorcycle in road mode. It is a phenomenal bike to spend time on. And it will collect speed pretty well. It'll end up doing somewhere around stuck. It'll cruise at about 85 or 90 pretty comfortably, but I would highly suggest you put a fly screen on it, because it being a standard, as you know, it'll beat you up pretty good. Also, put some bar end mirrors on it. And get rid of the Mickey Mouse stock mirrors, because for me, that absolutely drives me nuts. And you get this weird buffeting effect. But I can't deal with that, man. That absolutely just, it like my head is doing this, man. I'm going, what in the world, man? So yeah, if you've got the Gixxer 6, awesome bike, by the way, man. I'm jealous, dude. I got to admit, I am a little bit jealous, Goldfish, because if you couldn't tell, when I was riding that Gixxer 600 in that video, I am just in love with that, man. You know how many of these I've got? I've got literally, hold on a second. Okay, so I've got earplugs, but I appreciate that. Anyway, I'm having a ton of fun on that GSXR 600, and oh my God, I was having so many flashbacks. Oh God, it was like being a kid all over again, man. I wanted desperately, I really did. There was a couple of times where I was like, damn it. And even my wife is like, okay, which one are you home? You know, because she knows what's up, man. I can't, these things are like pretzels. You know, I can't just have one. Pringles and pretzels, I guess. I can't just have one. And so, which one are you bringing home? I was like, man, I'm not bringing any of them home. I can't. We are not in a position to afford more of these. You know, I've got too many mouths to feed already. And so anyway, so she wouldn't be surprised if I came home with a bike. We have a deal. If I get a bike, she gets to buy something expensive too. So these bikes end up costing more. Anyway, but we've got it's, I think she's more surprised when I don't come home with one. But anyway, getting to the point, that bike was so good. Golly, what a great bike. And I mean, I'm telling you, okay. There is a blue, just the traditional blue and white GSXR 750 up at the dealership, and it's just sitting there chilling. And I am not kidding. And there's also the same bike, but in GSXR 600, that is going to be the bike that I test ride. I don't need to take the Gixxer Thou up there when I do it. I'll just put it to you that way. I'm just saying. But look, go ride at 120, go ride to the Bonneville, and report back your findings. The cool thing about the Bonnie is that you can really make a cool bike out of it. The cool thing about a Bonneville is that you can put they've got the little saddle bags on the back if you want like the extra carrying capacity. Say you want to go, you know, on an hour-long ride, you're going to go out of town, you know, maybe, you know, go catch a cool restaurant or something like that. You're going to roll out with some buddies, you know, something along those lines. You can eat up miles on a Bonneville. They're good in that respect, but they handle well too. If you want to build a like mine, if you want to build a bike like mine, which is more of a cafe racer style, they're awesome at that. And I'm going to be careful with mine because I ride mine like it's a sport bike. And I kid you not, I have frustrated a lot of guys there's MT-07s are what that bike likes to go after. And look, when I'm on that bike, I'm actually kind of a prick because I will go after sport bikes. I don't know. It's just, I'll push them. I'll put it to you like that. And they're not used to seeing something that looks like a relic, you know, buzz past them at 110 miles an hour. So anyway, I will say this about that bike. I mean, in 6th gear, you will run out of mile per hour. It'll top out. I think I've had it up to 120 miles an hour in fifth. It's just that you'll run out of gear ratio really with that bike. It doesn't spin fast enough. The engine itself is just not enough RPM there. Sovereign saying, still here, just don't know enough about motorcycles to join the conversation. That's all right. You got questions now. This is a great place to learn. Goldfish, when's the last time you had a dirt bike? Far too long ago. Like me, you grew up riding them? Yes, I did. I have, from the ages of 5 to 18, 19, I had a dirt bike. So yes, it's been a long time ago, but yes. And I miss it desperately. There's some times where I would I don't really have the time, but I would love to get back. If I did have the time, I would get back into riding dirt. I loved. Anytime I could sky, I was a lot younger. I had a K80, and any chance that I had to sky that thing when I was a kid, I would absolutely do it. Yeah, good times, man. Love dirt, man. I would love to, you know what? I'd love to do the Baja 1000 places to ride in Texas. Yes, absolutely there are. Looks like we are having some internet issues. But yeah, getting back to the topic though, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up here in just a minute. So as far as like leader class bikes though, getting back to it, any regrets, anything that I don't like about them, I wouldn't call it a regret. There are some realities of having a leader class bike though, that you just have to contend with. They are very playful, but they're playful in the way that like a big Labrador puppy is playful, like a really big, one of those gigantic golden retrievers, right? Where, if they want to play, but they weigh 100 pounds and like their play is like kicking your ass kind of thing, right? The way I've also described it is, it's like playing with a tiger. Yeah, that just because they're playful doesn't mean they can't still accidentally do something to harm you. And it's not because they're trying to hurt you. It's just because they're having fun. That's kind of like a leader bike. They're so easy to ride that they'll lull you into thinking that you're not doing something absolutely insane. And that for me is the only drawback, if there is anything, to a leader class bike, because they do everything so effortlessly. And with the only drawback in most of the cases being that they're just a little bit oversprung because of the extra power that they have. But with some mindful tweaks to the suspension settings, you can make them pretty comfortable. Mine's not bad at all. It's a nice place to hang out on. And it'll absolutely eat up. I mean, I have no problem riding that bike at all, like for distance. So, at least for the distance I'm going to do, like 45 minutes to an hour at a time, like just in the saddle, it's not that bad. But the GSXR 750 would be nicer. I'm just saying, dude. It's a more comfortable place to be. Breaks up saying Kawasaki should bring back the W series and make it a 1200 or something. They have the W800 and there's the W300. The W800 is a nice freaking bike, y'all. Look, if you're into what he's talking, the W series of bikes is, in essence, it's like a licensed version of a BSA. It's a British motorcycle. It's like a licensed version of a BSA that Kawasaki made back in the 60s. And they're just a pretty bike. I would say that they're more in line with like the Bonneville, T100. It would be a real good like line of sight comparison with those bikes. But devastatingly pretty bike. And for the folks that knew about them, they loved them. They're great motorcycles. So, man, and I would love to see more of them because they're just that nice of a bike. But yeah, if they had like a W1000, that would be a killer bike. or 1200. Yeah. To compete with like the Bonneville T120. Skid saying, I had to be more of an observer this evening. Thanks, B, for enjoying the ride. Oh, it's enjoying the ride videos. Yes. Looking to try to do a lot more of those here pretty soon once the weather gets better. Well, you guys are about to get hit with some weather here pretty soon, aren't you? Oh, Golfer saying he had a W800. Amazing sound, 360-degree crank. That's it. Yep. Original parallel twin. So to give you an idea, back in the day, bikes like the Vincent Black Shadow, that would be a V-twin, by the way, but almost all of the most powerful motorcycles back in the day were all twins of some kind. And a parallel twin with pistons, up and down like this would be a 180-degree firing order. When both pistons move up and down at the same time, that's a 360-degree firing order, which is what all the Triumphs were. BSA, pretty much everything was that back in the day. And then recently they've moved to a 270-degree firing order, which is where one piston fires and then 270 degrees later, the next piston fires. So it's very much like a 180, just extended. And what that does is it gives the flavor of a 90-degree V-twin, and that gives a certain riding character. Plus, with a balance shaft, they're crazy smooth. And you don't get the rocking pair harmonic that you get out of a traditional parallel twin on a 180-degree motor. Goldfish saying, yeah, I was a flop in the States. Kind of weird it was too. The United States is a weird market, man. I got to admit, bikes that make sense don't do well in the States sometimes. That's just the way some motorcyclists are in that market. Kane's asking, why can't you ride dirt bike on the street? You can. They are called super motards. And they're phenomenal too. But yeah, it's as long as you got lights and blinkers and everything works, brake lights, not a problem. That's why they make the super motard style bike, and they've got more like dual sport bikes for the street. Quite a bit of them, matter of fact. One of the most famous is a KLR 650. See, the best overall bikes I've ever owned have been my Honda CBR 1000s, a new 1999 03, a used 01, a used 02, and have the 01 left. Dude, listen, CBR 1100s are awesome. All of the CBR bikes have always been good. I've never had an issue with a Honda. Now that I'm thinking about it, back in the day, the Honda CBR 1000, I really liked it because the way that I saw the Honda CBR 1000 from like 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's when I was doing the most work with my GSXR 750. And I viewed the Honda CBR 1000 of that era not as a 1000. I saw it more like, this isn't going to make any sense. I'm just going to say it and just roll with me here. I just saw it as a big middleweight. It was smaller than the older bike. It was more compact. Anyway, I got CBR 1000 on the brain now that you mentioned Honda, but it wasn't like the GSXR 1000. That bike always rode like it had 11 or 1200 cc's compared to the Honda, but damn, man, that Honda fit me perfectly. Oh, here's something else. You're asking about a break-in period. Goldfish was. Part of the break-in period is getting to know the bike in general, right? So you're going to be riding the bike. You're going to be getting your levers just where you want them. And the other thing is shift levers and brake levers, making sure that you're getting those things really in the right spot. I am so particular about where everything ends up sitting. And to give you an idea, like my settings for suspension, I'm half a turn out on preload up front, didn't touch preload in the rear. 37 millimeters up front, 35 millimeters out back. Every one of my settings is a quarter turn soft. Everything is set the exact same way, just stock minus a quarter turn. Technically, I show it as 2/8 because you do it in 8th turn, but it's a quarter turn functionally. I've got ASV levers. I adjust the clutch to where I have a business card, basically a business card of play, to where when I thump the clutch, the actual cable, it'll go click, click, click. I just want to be able to hear that. So always something good to look at is just a business card thickness. The angle for my shifter, I touch the brake lever. The brake lever angle factory is 35 or 37 degrees. I want to say 35. Let's call it 35 degrees. The angle and this is just like if your foot peg is here, like if this thumb is the foot peg, this would be the shifter, right? So that angle is, for the brake lever from the factory, is let's call it 35. My shifter my shifter lever angle is 40. I'm pretty solid on setting that to either 39 degrees or 40 degrees. Let's see. Sam said, I'm trying to eliminate some body roll for my side-by-sides, but it's not easy considering it's full. I guess that's Independence. Yeah. They have roll bars for those? Anti-roll bar? I'm not sure. Don't have a lot of experience with side-by-sides. I just have an old 200 SX four-wheeler. Does that count? No, it does not. But with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up Two Wheel Tuesday because I got to get back to work. Guys, appreciate y'all hanging out. If you made it this far, if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing. This channel is, and always has been, basically more or less a background noise generator. So appreciate you hanging out. Got any questions? Post them up in the comments. Let me know what you like about your 1000cc motorcycle. I'll be doing some more ride reviews with Stub Cycles, hopefully here pretty soon. Once the weather clears up, be able to get out and have a little bit of fun with that. Check out the inventory at Stubbs. Let me know if there's a bike that you want to check out. Shoot a comment on one of the videos, and I'll make sure that I put it in rotation. And with that, guys, y'all have a great one. Thanks again. I'd like to see you soon.